readers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm your host, Stephanie McGrath, and the Publisher Operations Specialist here at Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm Tara Kremen, the Senior Manager of Author Experience.
So in this episode, we talked to Maggie Marr. So not only is she an author, she's also an entertainment attorney and producer. She got her start in Hollywood the old-fashioned way, which we'll tell you in the episode, by pushing the mail cart. And she eventually became a motion picture agent.
Yeah, I met Maggie at Romance Author Mastermind, which is Sky Warren's conference that was held in Houston last year. And Maggie did a roundtable just kind of fielding questions, basically the million-dollar question that everyone wants to know. What do I do with my book to get it made into a TV show or a movie?
Yeah, she kind of gave us the rundown and where she kind of sees books and entertainment moving in the coming years.
Yeah, her predictions for the future.
So yeah, it's a great episode. Please keep listening.
So thank you, Maggie, for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So Tara told me that you have many talents. You're an attorney, a producer, and a writer. So I'm just wondering, how did your career start and how has it expanded to include all of these jobs?
Sure. So I started out as an attorney, and I was a prosecutor in domestic violence in Denver, and I was a public guardian in Chicago. And my husband wanted to move to Los Angeles. So I wanted to work in entertainment as well. So did a lot of research and discovered that the best way to learn about the entertainment business was to work at an agency. So I applied to ICM, International Creative Management, and I started in the mailroom. After having my own docket in a courtroom and doing that for a number of years, I came to LA, and the first day I started in the mailroom, there were 4 other attorneys and a PhD, and we were all pushing mail carts. Oh, wow. So yeah, it's true. You start in the mailroom. And so
I thought that was just in the movies.
It is not. And so I did that for 6 months and got my first desk and was an assistant to someone who became the head of the motion picture department at ICM, and then got my promotion and worked representing screenplay writers, directors, and books to film and TV, subsidiary rights for books. And all this time, I had always been a writer, but I grew up in the Midwest. And in the Midwest, if you're good with words, you become an attorney, which I had done. And so I would write for fun in my spare time. And I had a baby, and junior agents don't make a lot of money. And my husband said to me, if you sold that book, we could pay for preschool. And so I sent my first book to one of my colleagues in New York, because ICM also had a books department and still does, one of the best, book agencies in the world. And my colleague, I was kind of a coward because I was bound and determined I was going to be an agent, and I was kind of just doing this to satisfy my husband. And she called me up and said, "Who wrote this? I can sell it." And I said, "Do you really want to know who wrote this?" Because we were both junior agents at this time. And this is what we would do. As a junior agent with directors and screenplay writers who would often write books, I would send material to her. And she had book authors who would sometimes write screenplays, and she would send material to me. And we would try to find a way to help both of our clients be in more than one marketplace. And so she said, "I can sell this. Who wrote this?" And I said, "Do you really want to know who wrote it?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "I wrote it." And she said, "Is it finished?" And I said, "No, but it can be." And she said, "If you finish it, I will sell it." So that's exactly what happened. And lightning struck in that. So she took it out under a pseudonym because I was a junior agent and had decided that I was still going to be an agent. And first-time books don't usually sell for very much money. But I was lucky enough to have a bidding war for the title. And so it eventually sold to Crown in a 2-book deal. And that's how the Hollywood Girls Club became a book. And I remained an agent for a while, and then quickly figured out that writing under a deadline for the second title was much different than writing under the first book just when I had a little bit of spare time. So I became a client of the agency that I had been an agent at, and then I started pitching for TV and film. And the strike hit in 2008. So, but my clients kind of still would ask me to look at their contracts, or read. My former clients from ICM, would ask me to read their contracts or look at their scripts or their pilots. And again, it was my husband who said, "You're not a writer who writes 8 hours a day." I'm not. I'm a 2 to 3 hour a day writer. And he said, "Why are you not turning this into a business? You can represent the people that you worked with before." I said, "That's kind of a brilliant idea." And so everything has been very organic. So that turned into Maggie Marr Legal, which is kind of morphed into also a packaging law firm, because representing books and directors and screenplay writers and basically people who take ideas and turn them into something tangible. That's who I represent. So that's how that's a very shortened version of how all that happened.
Yeah,
Probably from about 2001 to 2009 or 10. So.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I'm trying to my brain's going a mile a minute here, being like, which question do I ask? So I guess we can kind of talk about your writing in a little while and kind of talk about, I guess, what you know best, which is the agenting side of things and selling work. So it's really something that a lot of people are really interested in, with Netflix scooping up a load of content, Wattpad are getting involved. We do Kobo originals here as well. So what's the first thing an author needs to know? What do they do if they, how do they get their books out there to be seen, to be even potentially picked up?
Oh, that's like the $1 million question.
And you have the answer, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I have maybe one, but the thing that is so wonderful about film and TV, and also that can be very frustrating, is that there are a million paths up the mountain, right? There are a million ways to actually get a book turned into either a film or a TV show, but there's not necessarily one path. I just had this conversation with a client last week. I said, and she was a book author, and I said, the thing about writing a book is that, if you sit down in the chair and you make your fingers do the tippy-tappy dance on the computer, eventually you have a book, right? I can't give you that kind of path to turn your book into a film or a TV, because there's a million ways. I've had incoming calls from both authors saying, this executive has reached out to me, or this producer, are they real? Can you tell me who they are? This is the document or the agreement they sent. Will you review it? I've had that happen. I've also had executives from Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu reach out to me and say, I hear you represent this author. We really like this book. Would they be interested? I've had producers reach out. I mean, it can go any one of those ways. And then there's also the possibility, if they're working in this industry, you hear about things that different producers or executives are looking for. So as I have those conversations, or one of the 7 meals a day that we have in LA, and somebody says to me, I'm looking for X, I can say, oh, I read a book and this is what it was about. And then it's easy to kind of put those things together to try to fulfill a need. So whenever I'm talking to someone in our industry, film and TV, I'm always saying, well, what are you looking for? What kind of project do you want to do? And then turning around to clients and friends and saying, well, do you have anything like this? Because I talked to this person and they were looking for this type of material. And I sit in a really nice seat because I have, my practice and my law degree. And so I can submit to people. A lot of times authors run into the problem where executives or producers don't want a direct submission from the author. They would like it to go through either an agent or an entertainment attorney. And that's to protect both sides.
Right. Do you think there's any need so if an author has a book that's finished and they are kind of interested in going the route of going through an entertainment person or an attorney, do you think that they have to consider adapting their work themselves into script form, or is it just sort of, it's, good to still send the finished book as it is? I'm just wondering because I know that screenwriting is such a different skill set than writing a traditional novel. So is that something worthwhile pursuing, or is that kind of a waste of effort?
Well, so 3 to 5 years ago, I would have said, because I did represent book authors doing subsidiary rights, and I would have said to them, unless you're, a best-selling author who really wants to move into film or TV, do not adapt your own work. Have it go to a producer. Let's find a screenplay writer who has some credits. Let's package it and put it together that way. Within the last probably 2 years, as I speak to different authors, I have kind of shifted that mantra into this. If you've ever wanted to do a screenplay, now is the time to try, right? Now is the time to take that leap or that risk or that endeavor and try it, because the market is so hungry for material right now. But with the caveat, do not do it with the expectation that first screenplay you write is going to sell, or that you're going to make a ton of money on it, or that you're necessarily going to get a deal. My thought is that if you wanted to explore that as a potential, now is the time to do it, because the marketplace wants material. But it's such a unique sort of skill set. There are some book authors who are very good at writing screenplays. I know a lot of them. And there are screenplay writers who actually have, books that they've written. But not everybody can transition from one to the other.
Yeah, they're so different. Like, I could never personally imagine sitting down and reading a screenplay. That would be tremendously boring to me. But
for NaNoWriMo, I tried to write a screenplay, and then I was like, I don't know how to do this. It's very hard.
It's like just pure dialogue. Like, yeah, it's hard. But yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, it's a good time to try it if you've ever wanted to. And then there are people who, George R.R. Martin was one of them. He worked in TV, couldn't quite get the career he wanted, so he went off and wrote his books, right? So he had a background already in film and TV. And I do represent a number of authors who had a background in film and TV and went off to write their books. And now they're coming back and also doing scripts, because they already kind of had that knowledge.
So I'm just wondering if an author, like the deal has happened, a producer has picked their work. What do you think is, before they sign a contract, what do they need to do? Well,
first of all, they should always read the contract themselves. Maybe it isn't surprising because I know that legal language can be very challenging to decipher. But I always encourage authors to make sure that they read their contract. And then if they have an agent, they should have the agent read the contract. If they feel comfortable with their agent's knowledge of it, that could be enough. If not, they should engage an entertainment attorney to read the contract and go through it. There are some things that you just want to make sure, especially when you're dealing with underlying intellectual property like a book, what rights are reserved, right? So it's always about trying to make sure that the rights that are meant to stay with the author, say audiobook rights, stage rights, book publishing rights, things like that they're explicitly reserved to the author in the agreements. Because you don't want to get into a situation as an author where you've actually sold more than what you intended to sell.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm wondering, what's a bad deal someone tried to get an author to sign, but
I mean, there's probably more bad deals than there are good deals.
Yeah.
That's just what I think. I mean, maybe there aren't.
So you've had a couple businesses over the years. What do you think has been the best thing that you've done for your business or your career, basically?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think what the best thing is that I've done for my career. I think it really has been pursuing things that interest me and remaining open to different ideas, never becoming so kind of closed off that you're not willing to at least listen to the changes that are happening in the industry, whether it's the publishing industry or the film and TV industry. And I truly love that because of the industries I participate in, I feel like I'm learning something new every day. It's just such a gift and a blessing to get to do what I do. I often talk about, I get to tell stories, but I also get to act almost like a little bit of a story midwife, helping someone to discover what is the best sort of way to turn a book story into a film or TV entity, right? Or I have author friends who sometimes will even talk about plot for their book. And then scripts that I also work on to try to get the financing and the attachments so that screenplay can be turned into a movie. So it's really just an amazing life that I've been able to put together from these different sort of avenues that all seem to weave into this really nice tapestry.
Mm-hmm. As you have the writing perspective and then also the kind of working on the more business side of this, just wanted to get your perspective about where things are going, because we at Kobo, we're kind of considering, we're not competing with other books when we're trying to get people to write books, but it's competing with other forms of entertainment. So, people are kind of ingesting media in different ways to how they were before. And I guess it's kind of an interesting line that the book can then become the other form of media. But where do you think it's going, or kind of how our reading or TV viewing or movie viewing, where do you see this kind of going?
It's such an interesting time, right? So now when I look at, say, a book, say an author has created a book, which is its own little underlying piece of intellectual property, there are a million different ways that piece of intellectual property can be served up, right? Somebody could read it. Someone could listen to it as an audiobook. There are even some authors that are they're almost like radio shows where they're breaking them up into smaller sort of bite-sized increments where you've got more than one narrator. So it sounds more like a radio show. You've got the idea of film and TV. Gaming is another thing that is potentially happening with books. It feels like there is a big growth in the idea of people want to be able to consume the intellectual property that they enjoy in a multitude of ways. So somebody might listen to the audiobook. They may want to watch the TV show that has some of those characters in it. And then the gaming component is another one where you're starting to see some books turned into games, interactive games online as well. I think a lot of it is very phone-based, because my kids that are younger than me, everything is on the phone. It took me a while to be okay with reading on the phone and even viewing, say, Netflix on my phone. But now I have transitioned to that. And that is, I think, another reason why Quibi is coming online. And I'll be interested to see how they disrupt the marketplace, because the idea of a 15-minute show is very akin to YouTube videos. And YouTube is something that my kids watch a lot of in short, sort of bite-sized
I watch a lot of YouTube.
Steph is a big YouTube fan. I've been made to catch up on some YouTubers more than once.
I watch YouTube more than I watch TV or movies.
Yeah. And I wonder if Quibi can bridge that, because this idea of 15-minute kind of a level of entertainment that is a little bit higher sometimes than what you see on YouTube, meaning the lighting and it's scripted and it comes across as a bigger budget entity, but it's a shorter amount of time. I wonder what will happen with that type of material in the marketplace, with YouTube viewers loving that sort of 15-minute bit.
I've never heard of Quibi before.
Yeah, it's Katzenberg, and then the woman, why am I blanking on her name? I think she founded eBay. They raised $1 billion to start Quibi, and I think the rollout for Quibi is 2020, but they've been making deals with different content creators and looking for material. So I'm really interested to see what that does in the marketplace, because they're focused on kind of 15 to 20 minute increments. And I feel like that is such a sweet spot for people who view things on their phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed on the weekend that there was a romance book. What is it called? I think like Virgin River. It's like a romance series.
Yes,
came out
at Netflix. Yes.
Yeah, and it was a season. I figured it would be a movie, but it was an actual like TV show, and I was really
it's a TV show.
Yeah.
And then Shonda Rhimes has The Bridgertons coming out. Was that from Julia Quinn?
Yeah, I'm ready for that.
I can't wait to see that. I'm so excited because the casting, I think, is diverse. I love those books anyway. And Shonda Rhimes is one of my favorites. And then I did not get to watch Virgin River this weekend, but I believe that the second season has already been greenlit by Netflix. I thought that was the case. They're pretty amazing with the way they can figure out the success of a show even before the show has officially started to stream. I don't know how they do it. They've got that magic logarithms and everything.
They do.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen to my favorite romance books. But this is a good transition into your writing, because you also write romance.
I do write romance. I've written romance now, I think, since 2000. The first book, Hollywood Girls Club, was more women's fiction, and it came out in 2008. And I think my first romances started to come out in 2010 or 11. So yeah, I love the genre. It's always been one of my favorites. And I tend to write contemporary, and then I have a paranormal series under a pen name. And then right now I've been working on an adaptation of a New York Times book for a producer from book to screenplay. So I'll be working on that until probably January of 2020.
Oh, so you're writing the screenplay?
Yes, the adaptation. It's for Paris Letters, which was Janice McGregor's book. And it's just a really beautiful story, and I'm really enjoying working on that.
Nice. Have you written screenplays before?
I have. I had a screenplay, The Apology Expert, that was under option. The Hollywood Girls Club books have been in and out of option ever since they came out in 2008, and then have written some pilots. It's interesting. I was out for TV a couple of times when my kids were little, pitching for television, and one of my friends, who was an executive at the time, turned to me and said, "Why would you want to be in a writer's room?" She's like, "You've got the best gig in the world." She said, "You write your books, you're at home, you're around the kids." She's like, "Why do you want to do that?" And it made me pause. I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe I don't want to do that right now, but now I'm coming out the other end of the the kids, they're getting ready to go to college and all of that. And I've always written, and I've always had a small legal practice. And now I see everything ramping up in a very big and exciting sort of way.
Nice. And do either of your children follow your writing streak?
My youngest, I would love for her to be a writer. I don't know if she will be a writer, but the oldest is much more mathematical than I am and scientific.
They can go and work for Netflix and get the algorithm magic down.
There you go. Maybe. But yeah, no, I just love the film and TV industry, and I love to find homes for great books. And I don't think I really quite understood what a unique place it is that I have the privilege of sitting in, which is understanding the film and TV business and also understanding the publishing industry and being able to kind of merge those two things together, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting because people sort of forget, the essence of both industries is the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be often overlooked, but yeah, it has to have a good story and a good kind of writing before it's a successful book or a series or anything. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. But when you see something magical, like say the Bridgertons meet Shonda Rhimes, I mean, how does that not turn into just the most amazing thing, visual?
I'm crossing my fingers.
Me too. Because those two things seem like such an incredible match of two such gifted storytellers and a moment in time that is so visually exciting. Just can't wait to see what they come up with on that one.
Well, what's the most exciting thing that you've worked on in your career in terms of film and TV? Was there any sort of pinch me moments that you're sitting across from an idol?
Yes, it's so funny. I don't get tongue-tied very often, but there have been moments when I have been tongue-tied. One of them was pitching books to Susan Sarandon when I was at ICM. That was a little bit, because that was one of those individuals, that I grew up watching and thinking was just brilliant and amazing. So definitely that. And then I tend to get a little bit tongue-tied with book authors that I really love and admire. So one of my mentors years ago when I was still an assistant at ICM had the Game of Thrones books, and they really didn't know how to turn them. They couldn't turn them into TV shows because there wasn't streaming and they didn't have the budget for it. And they didn't know how to turn it into a film even because it was so big and sweeping. And this was even before the Tolkien movies, right? In the Tolkien movies, the director, what is his name? I'm blanking
Peter
on
Jackson.
It. Peter Jackson. They developed such great computer programs to be able to put a lot of those scenes on film. It was his company that developed a number of those computer programs. So this was pre that. So nobody could quite get their mind around or their brain around how do we actually convert these amazing books into scripted visual entertainment. But I remember him being on the phone with my boss sometimes and just thinking, wow, this guy has written an entire world, right? Like entire world, and the creativity that goes into that. It's just, it's really awe-inspiring.
We just need him to finish writing it.
Right?
I've only been waiting.
Oh, yeah, no, that's interesting. What do you think it is about romance in particular that lends itself to such adaptations? And do you find that there's some tropes within romance that don't work well in different mediums or some that do? Is there anything that I know it kind of shifts as the kind of time goes. I know there's like a lot of kind of like rom-coms right now and things like that. But what do you think works well and what doesn't?
Well, the marketplace right now, I think romantic comedies work really well. I tend to agree with Damon Swade that romance is the literature of hope, that we write about love and the things that help us get through some of the tough times in life. So I think that strong heroines in romance are always in vogue. I like them very much, and I think you see that in a lot of very well-told stories. There still are some challenges within the film and TV industry of helping great romance novels make the transition, and that's into film and TV. And that's why I'm, again, really excited about the deal with Shonda Rhimes and Virgin River. And then I'm always excited about the holiday films because so many of them on Netflix and Hallmark and Lifetime revolve around romance. And I think that there's a huge market and a huge viewership for them. But there are some challenges sometimes getting some executives to really focus on romance novels as turning them into scripted entertainment. And what trope do I think really works? I mean, I think that the trope, sometimes the strong heroine who isn't sure whether or not she has time for love, I feel like that often works well. I think that the two characters that maybe have, I don't want to say they dislike each other, but they have a little bit of friction between them because they don't see eye to eye in the beginning. That sort of back and forth between what's traditionally been maybe a female and a male, that banter can lead into a really good dynamic that people like to view. So enemies to lovers, I think, is the trope.
One of my faves.
Yeah, right? Right.
I
haven't really seen, I'm trying to think if I've seen A Secret Baby, because that's a trope that's huge in romance reading. People love it. But I don't know that the J-Lo.
It's A Secret Baby?
I mean, not to ruin, it's kind of...
Wait, Hustlers?
No. Not Hustlers, the one that came out last year that was on Netflix where she's a secret businesswoman.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
Vanessa
Yes.
Hudgens is in it. There's a twist of The Secret Baby.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm writing this down because I want to see it.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, she works in this company and yeah, she goes back to, I'm really not.
Is this the one where she lies about her credentials,
Yeah.
but she knows she can do the job?
Yeah, because she's got life skills.
Good old J-Lo.
Love J-Lo.
Right? She's pretty amazing.
But no, that one's really great. But yeah, and that was a surprise. Kind of, yeah. Apologies to anyone if I've ruined that movie. I can't remember the name of it, so it'll be fine.
If they want to know, IMDb, J-Lo's latest film.
No, you're using IMDb.
No. So we like to ask this question of everyone that we talk to, but what have you been loving lately? Could be anything. Could be a book, movie, TV show, podcast.
I'm such an addict when it comes to books and when it comes to film. So I just this weekend, of course, binge watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Binge watched that. Just really ate it up. And I think part of it is the outfits and the acting and the stories and the places that they go. It was quite lovely. It's just a feast for my eyes, really. And I really enjoyed Killing Eve. I think that it's incredibly well scripted. Phoebe Waller-Bridges is the woman who is in Fleabag. She created Killing Eve as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she is just like a force. I watched all of The Crown. I thought that it was really well done. And then Barry is one of my favorites on HBO. And also Insecure, which hasn't come back yet this season, but I love it. As far as network TV, I've really been enjoying Mixed-ish because I love Blackish and Grownish. And I was excited when Mixed-ish came out and have not been disappointed at all. I think it's really well done. No. Yeah. And then for books, I mean, I've been doing a lot of audiobooks right now, but I've kind of been going into this. There's an author who writes, they're legal thrillers. Her name's Amy Austen. I've really enjoyed those, which is interesting because having a legal background, there's not a lot of legal books that I necessarily want to read, but I've been reading those and enjoying them. They're a little bit dark because they deal with some real world issues, but I like those a lot.
Has that inspired you to want to write any sort of legal thriller?
What? I don't know that I will. It's funny. I've been asked that a lot. I have kind of, because I've been doing this adaptation of a book to film, I've pressed pause on writing books until January. And what I'm looking for my unconscious mind to do is to let me know what is the right story that I'm meant to dive into in 2020. That's really what I want to do. And then I tend to only allocate 2 hours a day to the writing. And right now that's been focused on the adaptation. So.
Yeah. That's really great to just be able to dedicate like 2 hours a day. Like that's still a lot. When I tried to do Nano and it was an hour a day, I was like, this is impossible. So it's good for kind of good advice for authors to know that, because, you know, a lot of people still have their day jobs, to see that you can get this done when you're only dedicating a couple of hours a day.
Yeah, my family can always tell if I haven't been doing my writing, if my day job has kind of encroached on that in any way, because oftentimes my clients come first. So they'll say, have you written? Because I get a little bit irritable. I feel like it's another form of meditation for me. So I can't imagine not at least scribbling some words down every day for the rest of my life. Whether they turn into anything or not, they're definitely a way for my creative mind to keep chugging along.
Nice.
I guess
Yeah.
my final question is, do you have any advice for a writer struggling right now or someone whose work is not going the way they planned?
Oh, everyone struggles.
Mhm.
I mean, that's one of the things. I don't know if it's a misery loves company thing, but I've never met an author or a writer, no matter how incredibly talented they are or successful, whether that's by virtue of their readership or by virtue of being a literary darling. I've never yet met a writer who hasn't struggled and doesn't continue to struggle. You know, there are so many top book authors and screenplay writers and TV writers who always question what they've written, and so many who will say, this is the time they figure out that I'm not good at this. You know, that sort of fear of being a fraud. So I feel like that's just something that writers have to go through, and not to say to just push through it, but to acknowledge that that's part of the process. You're really giving so much of yourself to create a story. And I feel as though when we give ourselves like that, we really open ourselves up to the world and make ourselves vulnerable, you know, and it's a part of the process. So don't give up because of the struggle. Press pause, do some kind things for yourself, but know that the struggle is part of the process for every writer I've ever met.
Yes. I think that's great advice. And like that new opportunities are just around the corner, probably.
For sure. 100% they are.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie.
It was so nice to be here. Thank you for asking me. It's such a generous thing, and I've really enjoyed my time with you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're looking for Maggie's books, you can find them on Kobo. And if you'd like extra tips about how to grow your sales, please visit kobowritinglife.com. If you want even more podcasts, we have put together a list of our top 10 episodes that is available on Kobo Writing Life's YouTube channel, so check that out.
And don't forget to subscribe, because why not?
Subscribe, like everything.
This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Tara Kremen. This episode was edited by Kelly Robotham. Music was provided by Tearjerker, and special thanks to Maggie for being a guest on our episode. If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.
Happy writing.